Hello, everyone. This is Afrometrics research-based news, just giving you an update on the major research publications of this past week that are relevant to the Black world. So what's new in the research world this week related to Black people? A new study was published on the relationship between genetics, ethnicity, and smoking in the Journal of Translational Psychiatry. The authors of that study were Helen Choquette, G. Lin, and Eric Jorgensen. Over the last half century, there's been a significant decrease in cigarette smoking. However, there's still millions of smokers, and we know that smoking contributes to cancers, heart disease, and cardiovascular diseases. It's also very well known that socioeconomic status predicts cigarette smoking rates. Individuals with lower levels of education, lower income levels, the unemployed, and the unmarried are more likely to smoke cigarettes. And this new study conducted by Choquette, Yin, and Jorgensen, it represents the first investigation of the role that genetic ancestry plays in explaining cigarette smoking and smoking-related traits. So the authors studied these smoking-related traits in exactly 43,485 individuals of 4 different racial ethnic groups, including non-Hispanic whites, Hispanic Latinos, East Asians, and African American. The participants from this study were drawn from a Kaiser Permanente cohort, genetic research cohort. So the study found that smoking rates were the lowest among East Asians at 22.7% and the highest among non-Hispanic whites at 38.5%. They also found that higher percentage of European ancestry within Asians was associated with higher rates of smoking. They also found that Latinx individuals with higher percentages of European ancestry had higher rates of cigarette smoking. However, and the reason that this study is being reported this week is because there was no significant relationship between genetic ancestry and cigarette smoking for African Americans. In fact, the association between genetics and smoking among African Americans was diminished by the socioeconomic status when it was taken into consideration. So factors like levels of education, employment status, marital status, when all of those were taken into consideration, there was no significant relationship between genetic ancestry and cigarette smoking for African Americans, although there was a significant relationship between genetic ancestry and smoking rates for all of the other ethnic categories. So ultimately, there was significant associations between genetic ancestry and smoking-related traits found within racial ethnic groups, except for African Americans. For African Americans, the relationship disappeared when taken into consideration socioeconomic factors. So those socioeconomic factors were stronger. Jorge Victoria Ojeda recently published an article in the journal called Fronteras de la Historia, and it's in volume 19, issue 2 of that journal. The article is about African ancestry in Merida, Mexico. More specifically, the purpose of the article is to interrogate the popular idea that Yucatan and Meridan identity is exclusively the result of miscegenation or intermixture between Spaniards and the indigenous Mayan people. So the author uncovers the colonial property records of enslaved persons and other forced workers, as well as marital records in the city of Merida in the 1500s and in the 1600s. Jorge Ojeda points out that despite these records in the 19th century, the presence of Black people disappeared from the records because their presence was deliberately denied, because politically, the Spanish leadership in Merida was at war with the indigenous population and wanted to establish itself as a white city, and intentionally denied the presence of African people. So the article dismantles the notion that Meridan identity in Mexico is exclusively the result of miscegenation or intermixture between Spaniards and Maya people. And it highlights the fact of Meridan African heritage. So the study is an important step in making African people and African identity visible in the Yucatan Peninsula and in Merida. Lastly, the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education recently published a new report from the U.S. Census Bureau, which it examines the trends in bachelor's degree attainment in the United States between 2005 and 2019. The report shows that between 2005 and 2009, an earlier period, on average, 17.2% of African Americans over the age of 25 held a bachelor's degree. For years between 2015 and 2019, on average, 21.6% of African Americans over the age of 25 held a bachelor's degree. Thus, there was an improvement of 4.4 percentage points over that period. For non-Hispanic white adults over the age of 25, 30.6% held a bachelor's degree in the 2005-2009 period, and 35.8% held a bachelor's degree during the 2015-2019 period. And this is an improvement of about 5.2 percentage points. Thus, the racial gap in bachelor's degree attainment remained basically the same, but with a small increase in favor of whites. Those are three of the major research studies that came out in this past week related to Black people. So thank you, everybody. This has been an Afrometrics research-based news brief. You can visit us at afrometrics.org, and see you all next week with new studies from this coming week related to Black people. Thank you so much.